أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Inshallah, we're continuing our discussion. We are on page 206 from the words. Let me just double check, is my voice clear?
Yes, it is. Very good.
Okay. Whenever you can share screen, please do. Okay. Today we're coming towards the end of the 15th word. As you can see, we're reading a second small objection of Satan. We've been discussing the Quran and its verses and how sometimes we can receive questions that about the Quran and how is it written and whether it's the word of man or not. And the author is describing these questions as satanic questions, and he's been presenting arguments about it. And today it's another question from, he discusses another question that is also described as though the devil is saying it to him. So this part starts with a few verses from chapter 50, Surah Qaf, verses 18 to 24. And finally, a verse from chapter 11, verse 44. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Not a word does he utter, but there is a sentinel by him, ready to note it. And the stopper of death will bring the truth before his eyes. This was the thing you were trying to escape, and the trumpet shall be blown, that will the day whereof warning had been given. And there will come forth every soul, with each will be an angel to drive, and an angel to bear witness. You were heedless of this. Now have we removed your veil, and sharp is your sight this day. And his companion will say, here's his record ready with me. Throw into hell every contumacious rejecter. Okay, well, we have a set of verses. Most of them come from the same chapter. We'll see how the author, or what happened to the author while he was reading them one time. One time, while reading these verses from Surah Qaf, the devil said to me, you consider the most important aspects of the Quran's eloquence to lie in its clarity and fluency of style. But in this verse, the devil is arguing, it jumps from one subject to another. It jumps from death, agonies, to the resurrection of the dead, from blowing of the trumpet to the last judgment, and from that to the entry into hell of the unbelievers. What fluency of style remains with this extraordinary switching about? In most places in the Quran, it brings together subjects that bear little relation to each other like this. Where is its eloquence and smoothness with such discontinuity? So here the argument is pretty straightforward. Okay, you're saying that the Quran is, eloquent and clear and fluent. However, the verses can jump from one subject to another. And according to the devil, he thinks, well, that goes against fluency, or that goes against clarity or being eloquent. I honestly don't agree, but we can see what the author thinks. I mean, I didn't see how are these two contradicting things? How is jumping from one subject to another reduce the Quran's eloquence, or any piece of writing's eloquence? But we can see. I answered as follows. After its eloquence, one of the most important elements of the miraculousness of the Quran, of miraculous exposition, is its conciseness. So I actually looked up the word concise. Just wanted to remind myself what it means, so in case someone needs a reminder. So concise is something brief, but it's also meaningful. It's not just brief. So he explains conciseness is one of the strongest and most important elements of the Quran's miraculousness. Instances of this miraculous conciseness of the Quran are so numerous and beautiful that exacting scholars are left in wonder at it. Again, conciseness is one of the strongest and most important elements of the Quran's miraculousness. Instances of this miraculous conciseness of the Quran are so numerous and beautiful that exacting scholars are left in wonder at it. I feel we can pause here for any questions or reflections. I see a hand. Go ahead.
So I think we should understand the conciseness of the Quran very clearly. It is not difficult at all to understand it, because the purpose of the Quran, let me get to this here. The purpose of the Quran to teach what human beings cannot know. In order to fulfill this purpose, Quran, mostly half of the Quran, is full of examples of the prophets, ancient prophets, about which we have no clue at all. Their existence historically, some very recent ones, they refer to some ruins in and around Arabia, that the Quran refers to these ruins that you are witnessing here in this particular example. This is not the point again. Okay, I have seen an ancient city, some remnants of the ancient city out there, and thinking that, Quran is talking about this city or town, whatever the dwelling place is. Okay, what shall I do? And what is the point? Yeah, Quran is talking about the people who were destroyed here because of their adamant rebellions against the messengers, either to try to stop them or to kill them. So this evidence doesn't teach me anything that I cannot know in this universe. Bearing in mind the purpose of the Quran specifies its objectives to what human beings cannot know by exploring this universe, even excavating the earth and finding out old towns. Hey, I found out, so what? What am I going to get? With what lesson am I supposed to get lesson from this event? Again, physically, but the Quran omits this physical side of the matter and does, without falling into making a whole story of the prophets or exemplary lives of the prophets, which are presented to us in the Quran, and gives that this is the story of Solomon, for example. This is the story of the people of Ad, Thamud, whatever. What am I going to do with this story? You may only simply say that, look, these people rebelled God's message sent by the prophets and tried to prevent the prophets from delivering the message to people. Of course, we have to bear in mind what was the message that the prophets were trying to deliver and make human beings, other people, be aware of what the content of the message is. They are all related to introducing what human desires and capacities ask. For example, the simple, and we keep repeating this, look at this universe, it is wonderful. How come it came into existence? How come? It is perfect order, beautiful order, purposeful order, and the way they are created in a wisely way. What is the point? Let's assume that we have never heard any prophetic message or the people speaking under the influence of the prophetic message. We are left with this word as it is, a lump of matter, and everything is mysterious. How it came into existence, such a huge being here with wonderful qualities. I mean, impossible to explain how this perfect order and existence could come into existence by itself. So we are wondering now how it came into existence, how this beautiful, meaningful, purposeful aspect of the creation of the universe or existence of the universe came into existence. And even the biggest question is why it came here. I mean, unsolvable question is why I am given the ability to ask these questions. Who is doing that? I cannot say what is doing that anymore, because what means conscious matter? What answers conscious matter? No, what answers only what refers only to the unconscious matter, unconscious beings. So I have to say who? Who is doing all this? What is he expecting? What is he telling me? So the purpose being this, to teach how the universe is it has come into existence, and briefly why it exists in the way that it does. When the Quran mentions about any matter, it touches on this purpose, on the aspect of the story or mentioning about human feelings or whatever the social, we have the experience of social life only from the perspective of this point, the purpose of existence. Of course, depending on the human capacity now, he draws the attention of the reader from one point to one point and gives the message to him there. And then, of course, human beings are created with enormous capacity of feelings, abilities, enormous capacity of abilities. So when one side of my question is answered, I fall into another wonder. How about this side? Because we have many aspects of the same matter to question and then get the satisfactory answer and solve my question or find an answer to my question. So Quran jumps from one subject, for example, a clear subject now, telling about the beauty of acknowledging the Creator by being honest to yourself, to your expectations, and seeing the points of confirmation there, as the Creator is the merciful one, Creator of the universe, is a merciful one. Fine. But immediately comes, even when I don't accept this, what happened to me? And then jumps to the answer to this question, said, if you contradict yourself, you will find yourself in a hell situation. Think about it. Imagine there is no purpose in your existence, and you have this enormous capacity asking this question in a pressing way. Why am I doing this? Since the end of this world is transient and nothing after I die, as it seems to be, if we reduce the existence to matter with no purpose. And I say, how can I solve this problem? And the Quran jumps from describing how believing and submitting yourself to your Creator and seeing the universe as witness to this reality, but at the same time, you think of, why should I submit myself? Yeah, it may be beautiful. If I don't really acknowledge the Creator, saying that, okay, there's a Creator in the universe and that's it. There must be a Creator and take care of my life. No, he says, if you are left alone and if you don't really bring your belief into practical life, you will find yourself in this world while you are believing in God as the Creator only, you will find yourself not satisfied with human expectations in your practical life. Jumps from one subject to another subject in order to satisfy all the aspects of human expectations or inquiries. So suddenly we see a paragraph in the Quran talking about paradise and the people of paradise and believers, and jumps to the other subject talking about the conditions of disbelievers and conditions of the consequence of disbelief as to be hell. But jumping, and from there, of course, when we read this, he suddenly changes the subject, says that, don't you look at the skies and the universe, all the earth, everything is created, how you are treated wonderfully, who can arrange it? Because human mind comes from there. There must be such end, eternal life after I die. This is what it says, but how can I be convinced? Here are the evidences, as if dealing with the human feelings from all aspects, following one another. Of course, we are given free will. Free will means I can choose what is right and I can deny what is right. I am free and go into what is wrong, which means doesn't have any evidence at all, an imaginary alternative. So if you follow the imaginary alternative, like following a mirage in the desert, expecting that I will get the water over there, look, the sun is shining on a sea or on a lake or whatever, a water puddle. You go there, nothing. Because the end is meaningless, the death seems to be. So you say, oh, disappointment, and comes up with another subject. Of course, if you deny God, if you leave yourself, if you think that you are self-sufficient, then you cannot satisfy anything, although you may pile up lots of wealth. At the end, you know that you will become an old man. You won't be able to do anything. I know a very, very rich man in my own life experience. Towards the end of his life, he could eat nothing but potatoes, puree, or whatever you call it, and smashed potatoes. Nothing. All his wealth, huge wealth, became worthless. And of course, he knows that that is the end of the tunnel of life. After death, everything will be gone. So this despair needs to be explained, and the Quran really handles the human needs, spiritual needs, or the satisfaction of the spiritual needs, all from all aspects. We are not really we are not only human beings with one sense at all, with one question at all. How many questions we have if we really reflect on the reality of our existence deeply? No, questions upon questions, endless questions we have to handle, and the Quran comes up with his answer. That's why we are not expecting from the Quran to go chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. So while we are reading the sections of the Quran, which are called surahs, each surah, 114 groups of verses, surahs, none of them works like following each other, and explaining one subject. For example, if you read a PhD thesis, or if you read a book about a certain discipline, chemistry, for example, it starts from the first section and goes and goes. At the end, conclusion is there. What the researcher or the author of this book as a researcher, how it started his research and ended up with this conclusion, result. And this is the purpose of the thesis. Because our minds are accustomed with this kind of reading the book, which consists of or the books actually, which consist of certain subject and follows chapter 1, 2, 3, and each chapter in the paragraph, that the paragraph in each chapter also builds up the conclusion about one topic. Quran deals with human beings, all with his feelings and capacities. That is why we have to understand that the Quran has to follow the principle of conciseness, briefly touching upon the main point, not really going into an aspect of the matter it is dealing with, which is not related to the answers that human beings are expecting from their creator, God. So if we define Quran in this way, we are left with the expectations that none of the stories of the prophets should be complete in and of itself, with an exception of the story of Joseph. That is a certain purpose. It needs to be studied separately, but more than half of the Quran is full of stories, and especially the prophetic stories are amazing, full of wisdom, and the content of the, believe it or not, it may sound strange, the content of the Quran's 3/3 is all about prophetic stories, including the Prophet Muhammad's lifetime experience stories. That is why we have to understand why none of these stories are complete in one section of the Quran. That is not the point, as we have discussed. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience listening to me, to my long, extended, unnecessary talk. Sorry for this.
Thank you. I was reminded when you were speaking how the author in a different section of the book, he was describing how the verses, like each verse can be considered a Quran, in the sense that it's almost like the Quranic message is in every single verse, and the meanings that you can see in one verse are infinite. Therefore, it's almost like we can treat each verse as a Quran. Yeah, that's it. And I made a mistake earlier. I just realized that the few verses I read in the beginning, they actually all come from the same chapter. I thought they came from two different chapters. It's one chapter, Surah Qaf. And now we'll read another example, but from chapter 11, and it's verse 44. The verse says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Somebody was raising a hand. If you know.
Oh, there is? Oh, I don't see it on my phone.
I realized you're on your phone, so I unmuted myself.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Jazakallah for your comments, and for also Brother Ali's. I'll just summarize what I understood in thinking about how this topic started with conciseness. So instead of, and I wouldn't go too much into it, instead of, I guess, thinking about conciseness just in terms of the language of the Quran, it's like grammatical style and other stylistic features, with the way that we are also understanding or emphasizing conciseness in this point is that It's concise as in it is precise and exactly to the point of what the human condition needs. So it is conciseness in this way means that it is particular to a very fundamental, and I guess the whole point of being human. So that's because it's addressing this point, that's what makes the Quranic message concise. So I just wanted to share what I got from rethinking about the concept of conciseness in the way that we're studying.
Thank you. Okay. So the other example where the author will explain how we can see conciseness. It says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Then the word went forth, O earth, swallow up your water, and O sky, withhold your rain. And the water abated and matter was ended. The ark rested on Mount Judai, and the word went forth. Away with those who do wrong. It describes the great flood and its consequences so concisely and miraculously. In a few short sentences that it has caused many scholars of rhetoric to prostrate before its eloquence. Can you go a little down? Yeah, there you go. Thank you. And for example, the Thamud rejected their prophet through their inordinate wrongdoing. Behold, the most wicked man among them was deputed for impiety. But the apostle of God said to them, it is a she-camel of God, and bar her not from having her drink. Then they rejected him, and they hamstrung her. So their Lord, on account of their crime, obliterated their traces and made them equal in destruction high and low. And for him is no fear of its consequences. These verses are from chapter 91, verses 11 to 15. In these few short sentences, and with a miraculousness within the conciseness, fluency, and clarity, and in a way that does not spoil the understanding, the Quran relates the strange and momentous events concerning the Thamud people, together with the consequences and their calamitous end. Okay. Another example. And remember, Zunnan, when he departed in wrath, he imagined that we had no power over him, but he cried through the depths of darkness, there is no God but you. Glory be unto you. I was indeed among the wrongdoers. This is a verse from chapter 21. Here, many sentences have been rolled up between the words that we had no power over him, but he cried out in the depths of the darkness. But these omitted sentences neither spoil the understanding nor mar the fluency of the style. It mentions the most important elements in the story of Jonah, peace be upon him, and refers the rest to the intelligence. I feel like we can pause here. Any thoughts or reflections on these three examples?
I would say that usually we go on living our lives in heedlessness, and something like an interruption occurs, then we sort of, start questioning the existence of everything. And that pretty much is like an invitation to make us realize the purpose of our existence. What are we doing here? And I guess, the verse totally reminds me of recognizing that I'm not setting up the stage for me. There must be one that's bringing every event into existence. So it's just like a learning opportunity, you just one assignment after another to make us recognize that we are being taken care of here by a host of this universe, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Okay. All right, I'll continue reading. And for example, in Surah Yusuf, the 7 or 8 sentences between the words "send me" and "Joseph, O man of truth." These are verses 45 and 46 in chapter 12. The 7 or 8 sentences between the words "send me" and "Joseph, O man of truth" have been skipped in conciseness. It neither impairs the understanding nor mars the smoothness of the style. There are a great many instances of this sort of miraculous conciseness in the Quran, and they are beautiful indeed. However, the conciseness of the verses from Surah Qaf are particularly wonderful and miraculousness. Okay, so he's referring to the first few verses of this section. For they each point out the truly dreadful future of the unbelievers, which when each endless day they will last 50,000 years, and the grievous dire things that will happen to them in the awesome revolutions of the future. It conveys the mind over them like lightning, presenting that long, long period of time to the mind's eye as a single present page, referring the events which are not mentioned to the imagination. It describes them with the most elevated fluency and smoothness of style. Okay. Feel like I want to repeat one sentence. Yeah, the one that says for they. For they each verse points out the truly dreadful future of the unbelievers when each endless day will last 50,000 years. I appreciate the description of the author here because I feel like it's being brought to my attention that the verse is like very rich. It's describing something that's gonna happen in the future, that's something that's gonna happen for years. yet it's being told in a few words. I mean, is that what conciseness is? Being able to describe something, I mean, that's serious. That is, it has to be told with conviction. It has to be told with precision, as Farah was explaining earlier. And it has to give that sense that it's something that's going to last for 50,000 years, that it's an endless day, that it's a grievous and dire thing that's going to happen. So, yeah. Any points here or reflections here? Okay. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think either we have to study the grammatic structure of the Quran and how we can see the difference between one phrase and jumping to another phrase, and see the conciseness and imagine the gap in between this two phrases, what it could have, what we human beings could have brought out and fill in. It needs really a deep study of each verses used here as an example. Then I think it is somehow goes beyond our limit, because we cannot study the verse here as we have been doing on Mondays and Wednesdays, one verse in an hour. Or last time we spent 1 hour discussion on one word of a verse. We cannot go, so I feel that how are we going to deal with this? Just an example, think about it as much as you can, use your imagination from the translation of it and try to understand. Otherwise, we can't really go into the deep analysis of the verses. The purpose of this class is just to draw our attention to while we are reading the Quran and trying to understand what it is talking about, we have to bear in mind that if we see from one point to another, there is that sudden change and jumping subject to another subject. Why not why it doesn't give me a picture which is in its entirety full of pictures that I can imagine, but if there are some unnecessary things that it just really satisfies my wonder. My wonder means what happened to Yusuf, how he was transferred from the well he was thrown into and to Egypt, and which market he was sold as a slave, or which kind of house conditions were where he was bought in by the chief administrator of the country in his house. What was the date? These are, okay, I know the date. What am I going to get? An answer or any satisfaction from it? Just historical information, not my satisfying my existential questions, human questions which needs answers. This is not the answer whether this Pharaoh was Ramses II or Ramses I. What are you going to do even? It is a symbol of an arrogant man. That's it. And addresses to my arrogant side of human being, arrogant side of my feelings, claiming that, for example, in the example of Moses and the Pharaoh exchange of discourse, the Pharaoh said, I am the Rab, the Lord. I am God. Is there any God other than me? Speaking to people that this land is mine and you are just benefiting from my land. I am feeding you. What are you talking about? That there is something else who feeds you. If I didn't let you benefit from my land, you will die of hunger. That apparently seems to be correct. But I can have the same attitude towards my children or anybody who is under my care and claim that this is my house, this is my land, this is my something, whatever the properties I have, this is my knowledge. I can claim this. That side of me, that aspect of human beings represent what? Pharaoh-like attitude, Pharaoh-like claim, saying that I own this body and with this body I work here and cultivate the land. All the producers are my property. Don't pay attention to the creation of it. For example, the Pharaoh said, you are just benefiting from my land. This is my land. All the rivers are running under my feet, means under my authority. So I can say, look, this land is under my authority. Same thing. Relate to yourself. What are you going to do with Ramses, or what year it was before Christ? What year it was? 2,000 years, 3,000? What are you going to do? It is something to do to you. It is something to do with you. Relate to yourself. Relate to your feelings. So the Quran doesn't mention. For example, Quran mentions, so interesting. Quran mentions about Moses' mother. And some historians wonder who was his father. Really ridiculous. What am I going to do with it? I'm not after the family tree of learning family tree of Moses' family life. What am I going to do with it? If something is mentioned in the Quran, this is the point which speaks to me and says, put yourself in the place of Moses, put yourself in the place of Pharaoh, and see the argument within your own world. It is going on there. The argument is there. So the Quran speaks to you as your creator is speaking to you, educating you, training you, if you like, giving it, showing a path to you, which way you need to follow, which way is really false claims. Pharaoh claimed that land is mine. Of course, when he dies, land is still there. Before he was born, land was there. How does he say it is mine? It is given to him as it is given whatever the property I have that I am proud of, it is given to me. For example, let's say if someone is the owner of a manufacturing company, okay, this is my plant, this is my factory, whatever, this is my business, I own it. But in fact, whatever is created in this property that he claims the ownership, he has only the right temporarily utilize from it for his own benefit. He is in need of them to be created. He cannot create them. He or she cannot create them. Comes to my feelings, for example, I really enjoy this. I really wish it should happen in this way, saying that this is my wish. No, this is given to you. You have to acknowledge the one who gave it to you, created you with this wish, and act according to the purpose of this feeling. What is the purpose? Then you have to think, why do I think that this feeling has been given to me? Why do I think that? What is the purpose? So when we really concentrate on my own reality and try to understand the nature of these feelings, I will first understand that they are given, they are not mine, they are just gifted temporarily to me as a promise, as a tool to be used. Tool to be used for what? To acknowledge his creator, one, and then two, to submit to his creator's purpose in creating that feeling. What is the purpose? We have to think about it. Can I use my feelings for temporary base, and then thinking that at the end I benefit from this feeling? So, for example, let's say loving, that is the most generally practiced, loving the property, which I have as well. Okay, I have to understand, why should I love the property? Why should I be given the sense of loving the property? I have to question. When I question it, I will understand that, in order to understand that, although I have this sense of loving the property, but at the same time, I cannot claim the ownership of any property in this world permanently, just permission to utilize it temporarily. What is the point? In order to understand that you are not the owner of it. So investigate, search for. If I am not the owner of this property, so who is the owner of this property? And why the owner has given to me? And these questions are answered in the story of Moses and Pharaoh dialogue, conversation. So Pharaoh says something, Moses says something. So if I understand that the purpose of the Quran to really educate, train me to get the right path of using my abilities, then I have to pay attention to the peace that is mentioned in the Quran. All the gap between the parts, pieces of the same story scattered everywhere in the Quran must be taken within the context of the subject studied there and utilized within the context where each piece has been utilized, taught, discussed. So That is why we, rather than going into the great depths of it, analyzing the verses, which is beyond my capacity. If anybody can do it, please go ahead. We have to really understand the value of being conciseness rather than a defect of the Quran, but perfectness of the Quran it refers to. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. I'll continue reading. It's very brief. When the Quran is read, listen to it with attention and hold your peace, that you may receive mercy. This is chapter 7, verse 204. And the author responds saying, "And now if you have anything to say, O Satan, say it." Satan replied, "I cannot oppose what you say, nor defend myself, but there are many foolish people who listen to me, and many devils in human form who assist me, and many pharaohs among philosophers who learn things from me, which flatter their egos and prevent the publication of works like yours. Therefore, I shall not lie down my arms before you." That's the end of the word. Thank you very much for today. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله